Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani, and these are this hour's headlines.
So both NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member of our alliance.
Ukraine will be a NATO member in the long term, says NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg. But he stressed that the immediate priority for Ukraine is to stay independent in the face of Russia's invasion. Nigeria's opposition parties call for the cancellation of election over vote counting irregularities they say that were found in the results announced so far. Russian forces are pressing forward their offensive to encircle and capture the city of Bakhmut, where the commander of Ukraine's ground forces has described the situation as, quote, extremely tense. Denmark's parliament tells its lawmakers and staff to uninstall China's short video app TikTok, citing what it called, quote, a risk of spying. This after the European Commission banned the app on work devices. The president of France's Football Federation has stepped down following accusations of sexual and psychological harassment, bringing to an end an 11-year spell in charge. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's surprise visit to Ukraine and the meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky and other government officials has put the focus on U.S. support. Last year, the number of deaths were up by 1/3 over the previous year. Also, investigators say that some weapons meant for Ukraine are in the hands of Finnish criminals. Earlier, Nigeria warned that Ukraine war was funneling arms into the Lake Chad basin. However, Ukraine's government has pushed back against Western concerns. Well, for more on this, we are joined by Adel Nazarian, Media Fellow at the Gould Institute for International Strategy. She's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Well, I'm so glad we're joined by you, Adel, and I'm also very glad that we're finally addressing these issues that Interpol has been warning about for months now. How regulated and transparent is the process of use of the massive funding and arms sent into Ukraine from the U.S. as well as the EU?
Hi, great to be on with you again. Thank you for that question. You know, we can never guarantee the full transparency or accuracy or efficacy that this nearly $77 billion worth of aid will actually arrive at its intended destination. That's why I always advocate for getting even foreign aid, humanitarian aid, on a blockchain. But I think that from what I've seen is with Treasury Secretary Yellen's visit there to the region, to Ukraine, it does signal a greater, more hawkish, I would say, approach towards ensuring that the aid actually does arrive where it's supposed to, from humanitarian to financial to military. And so I think that some probably red flags, considering the past history of how financial transactions have occurred in that region specifically, may have led to the Treasury Secretary's visit to the region herself to keep an extra eye on what's going on.
Yeah, and you know, as you mentioned, there have been reports in the past of huge corruption in the Ukrainian government, and that has been a cause for concern, notably for people here in the United States as well. I know you touched on, you know, the monitoring of funds to an extent, but how much of this trip by Yellen do you think might have a domestic angle to it as well? There is a lot of concern here in the United States about the funds that we're sending to Ukraine and how it's being spent.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, in 2020 alone, the amount of money that was sent to other countries, I think it was about $3.3 billion to Israel, for example, and $250 million, if not mistaken, to Ukraine that year. And so since the escalation occurred on February 24th of 2022, with Russia invading, that's just an astronomical jump in the amount of money spent there. So not only is the fact that the U.S. has contributed so much foreign aid assistance to Ukraine, along with our European allies and counterparts, also that have also stepped in and provided aid to Ukraine. You're right. The fact that Yellen herself has gone ahead and paid a visit to the region is sending a message to Vladimir Putin and to Russia that this is essentially a detente also with the United States, and a war with the United States indirectly, because when you're putting so much of your own funding, especially military equipment, towards a war of this scale between two warring nations, then it's absolutely a signal that the United States is also involved and indirectly or directly at war as well. So that's a very, very strong message. But as far as it goes in terms of seeing the full transparency and delivery of that aid to its intended recipients, corruption, of course, has existed in that region. Corruption exists in, if you want to be truly, truly objective about it, in every country. It's just that certain countries have different regulations and a judicial system governing them that allow for the obfuscation or the more skirting around it in a different way. And of course, Ukraine is no stranger to this. But I do believe that with the massive amount of aid that is going into the region, perhaps a more appropriate and important way to truly, truly ensure that the money is going to where it's supposed to go is to actually get foreign aid, humanitarian aid, on a blockchain so that it can be monitored, it's transparent, there's no discrepancies, and the start to finish are very, very accurately transcribed and recorded.
Okay, Adele, thank you so much for that. Adele Nazarian, Media Fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you so much.
The United States, Canada, and the European Union are cracking down on Chinese-owned special media app TikTok. Canada is the latest to announce a ban of TikTok from government-issued devices and mobile phones. India had ordered a blanket ban on the app in 2020. Canada's decision has added to growing tension between China and the West. The Canadian government says TikTok poses unacceptable levels of risk to privacy and security. Prime Minister Trudeau stated his government is looking carefully at how to ensure the safety of Canadians online.
I suspect that as government takes the significant step of telling all federal employees that they can no longer use TikTok on their work phones, many Canadians, from businesses to private individuals, will reflect on the security of their own data and perhaps make choices in consequence.
In December, the U.S. Senate passed a bill to bar federal employees from using the app on government-owned devices. On Monday, the White House gave government agencies 30 days to ensure they don't have TikTok on federal devices and systems. Beijing had strong words.
作为世界头号大国，竟然如此惧怕一款青年人喜欢的应用软件，未免太不自信了。我们坚决反对美方泛化国家安全概念、滥用国家力量、无理打压别国企业的错误做法。
The European Union's two biggest policymaker institutions recently banned TikTok from staff phones for cybersecurity reasons. The European Commission and the EU councils have said staff will be also required to remove TikTok from mobile devices. While diplomacy seems to be at the core of the West's decision to crack down on a China-owned app, it's also ironic that China invokes the principle of fair competition and open market when apps from around the world struggle to go past the Great Chinese Firewall. Rupert Murdoch acknowledged under oath that Fox News hosts endorsed Trump's claims that the 2020 elections were stolen. He also admitted that he didn't step in to stop Fox News hosts. The claims and the company's handling of them are at the heart of a case against the cable news giant. Dominion Voting System, a voting technology firm, has filed a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit. Documents in the case show Murdoch and other Fox executives believe Joe Biden fairly defeated Donald Trump. The results were not in doubt. Murdoch's testimony is from his deposition in the lawsuit. The testimony sheds light on Fox's internal deliberation as it covered poll rigging claims. Fox sought to avoid losing viewers to far-right competitors that embrace Trump's narrative. Fox has argued that its coverage of claims by Trump's lawyers were inherently newsworthy. Fox is also flagging a blatant violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The reputation of the case filer, Dominion, is at stake too. The company seeks to recover from what it has described as irreparable harm to its business. A 5-week trial is scheduled to begin on April 17th. Dominion has argued that Fox Network knowingly spread falsehoods about Trump's loss to bolster its ratings. Dominion claims Murdoch closely monitored Fox coverage, but declined to wield his powerful editorial influence. Murdoch testified that he believed early on that everything was on the up and up with the election. He doubted claims of election fraud from the very beginning. In its filing, Fox argued Dominion's extreme interpretation of defamation law would stop in the media in its tracks. The plaintiff says Fox Network amplified false claims that Dominion voting machines were used to rig the election.
Families or our immigrants.
America safe again. We will make America glorious.
For any politician, press conferences are important because they may receive the response to their policies, and in any democracy, that demands accountability. However, a study has found that U.S. President Joe Biden has held fewer press conferences and media interactions than any U.S. president in recent memory. In his study, David E. Clemenson of the University of Georgia notes that Joe Biden held his first press conference in March of 2021. That's more than 2 months after his inauguration. His presidency also marks the largest gap any U.S. president has gone without holding a press conference in 100 years. In most of his press conferences, Biden can be seen reading prepared remarks and then leaving without taking questions from reporters. And if he is taking questions, he can be seen with a pre-selected list of reporters. And this practice is not limited to President Biden. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre repeatedly avoided answers to reporters' questions when classified documents were found in Biden's home and former office. But what could be the reason to avoid press conferences? Well, one of the prime reasons is fearing risk of getting negative responses from voters. Concerns has been raised of the president facing flack for dodging questions. And according to the study, the viewers are likely to believe the allegations made by journalists. The second possible reason is twisted questions the press panel may be loaded with. In the White House, the journalists are often seen asking tricky questions where a set of answers are not possible.
Thank you. Mr. President, can you pass voting rights with the Senate full of the filibuster?
The United States has announced measures against large-scale exploitation of migrant children in the country. This would include aggressive investigation of companies employing children. The Biden administration announced that it was creating an interagency task force led by the Department of Labor to crack down on illegal child labor. Child labor investigations would be launched in areas where statistics indicate that minors could be exploited. A 4-week audit process has been announced of the sponsor vetting process, which has been under scrutiny in recent years. The Department of Labor said that it would target not just the factories and suppliers that illegally employ children, but also the larger companies that have child labor in their supply chain. Reports have said that many children crossing the U.S.-Mexico border without their parents in record numbers are ending up in punishing jobs. Records say 130,000 unaccompanied children were processed by U.S. officials along the southern border in 2022 alone. After being released from federal custody, migrant children, many teenagers often end up working in grueling and dangerous jobs. Factories, meat plants, and construction sites have been found violating federal child labor laws. The U.S. House of Representatives raised concerns on the issue with a Democratic lawmaker from Michigan calling on Congress to act. Real-life stories of kids dropping out of school, collapsing from exhaustion, and even losing limbs to machinery were compared to Dickinsonian evils. Under a 28 federal anti-trafficking law, children arriving alone from countries other than Canada and Mexico are allowed to stay in the United States and apply for asylum or other legal protection. Plugging loopholes that lead to massive exploitation of children is a huge challenge. The United States has asked the Mexican government to extradite Ovidio Guzman, son of jailed drug boss El Chapo, accused of following in his father's footsteps. He allegedly helped to run his father's infamous Sinaloa cartel. Since El Chapo was handed over to the United States in 2017. El Chapo is currently serving a life sentence in the United States for trafficking hundreds of tons of drugs in the country. Over the course of 25 years, the United States has offered a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to his capture, although he was captured briefly once before in 2019. That capture was in the northwestern city of Culiacan. Security forces freed him after his cartel waged an all-out war in response. 10 soldiers and 19 suspected criminals were killed during the operation in the Sinaloa cartel stronghold, with a dramatic shootout taking place at an airport. According to Washington, Guzman is accused of helping oversee nearly a dozen methamphetamine labs in Sinaloa, as well as conspiring to distribute cocaine and marijuana. Guzman secured a court order in January blocking his immediate extradition to the United States, and a judge gave the United States until March 5th to present an extradition request. Hollywood actor Michael B. Jordan was all smiles at the Los Angeles premiere of Creed 3. The film marks his directorial debut, and the reviews have hailed the actor turned director as an accomplished filmmaker. More details in our next report.
I mean, the fact that people love it and they understand what I'm trying to do, you know, what I was trying to say. It took a lot of creative swings, and the fact that they enjoy where the franchise is going just means the world.
I, have begun producing and own my own production company. She owns her own record label and is producing herself. So I think really getting to mature and grow with her, both in my personal life and my life as an artist, as an entrepreneur, I think has been a real pleasure. But she continues to stretch me.
Don't let him destroy everything you've found.
That's all the time we have for this edition of WION Live Broadcast from New York City with me, Susan Tehvani. Thank you for staying with us and watching. More news and updates coming up next on WION World This Way.
Many other